just my kind of conservative. Capitalism and the environment, that's kind of a rare combination. You're right, the left has grabbed onto it, though, as you may know, I have a full chapter in Adios America about what will happen to the environment. I mean, the real environment, not the crazy shut down all capitalism that the left pushes in the guise of environmentalism. In my book, Adios America, I mean, that is something sort of distinct about America and the Anglo-Saxon world, our love for the environment, for plants, for animals. If you would like to ask me in question and answer, I will elaborate. This did not come from a Chinese lab. That's a Cato Institute scam. Oh no, they're lovely people. They're fine. They're not primitive at all. Just we should need to bring them here and maybe invade like Iraq. They're just like us. No, other people of the world are very different. That's a big part of why mass immigration is hurting us. Another big part I will get to in the main point of my speech. I thought I'd talk about politics. I don't have that much to say about the Chinese coronavirus because we don't have much data. It's been kind of driving me crazy. The data we have suggests that perhaps at this stage we're kind of overreacting. I feel like the entire country is being subjected to airport security. You'll recall on 9/11, 19 Muslim immigrants slaughtered 3,000 Americans, and in response, little old ladies from Oklahoma suddenly had to start being goosed at airports. And now, because of these wet markets in China and Wall Street deciding to unite our economy with the Chinese, some of the things that are going on now, and in some ways I might be harsher than the measures they're taking. I think I'd shut down all flights from New York just permanently to the other 50 states. Fine idea. But I don't know if you've seen this. You can't go to the beach. Wide open beaches, the fresh ocean breeze, the English, it used to be, a cure. Go down to the south of France, the sea cure. The New York Times a year or two ago wrote an article saying there's something to that. Ocean breezes are very healthful. No, you can't do that. You can't golf. Golfers are 50, 100 yards away from one another getting healthy exercise. There was a guy out on his boat off of Malibu. Are they worried he's going to give the Wuhan virus to the fish? No, he gets stopped, and some man playing t-ball with his daughter in the park. I mean, he's living with his daughter. No, go home, being in close confinement. He was arrested for not properly socially distancing, for using a public park. So that's what I mean about airline security being imposed on the whole country. That you take a crisis and then just overreact, punish everyone equally, as opposed to being more direct in what they're doing. But it seems like to me that with better data and better drugs, we can get this country up and running again. How the coronavirus will affect the election, my position is it's kind of a microcosm of what I would have said about the election before the Chinese coronavirus. And that is, if Trump had just stuck to his campaign promises. In addition to my last book, Resistance is Futile, I also wrote In Trump We Trust. That was the most magnificent campaign. The things Trump promised, the things he said, he didn't back down, whether it was on the carried interest loophole for hedge fund managers, obviously on immigration, on the wall, on trade, on going after China. Unfortunately, he seems to think he's still just campaigning and can't actually do any of that stuff. He's a very good talker, not so good at the getting stuff done phase of it. And so I say the same thing with the Chinese virus. If he had stuck to it, if he had immediately blamed China, if he had signed that executive order saying the United States government, which buys a lot of pharmaceuticals, will only buy from American companies that make their drugs here in America. We heard in the New York Times a month ago that that executive order was going to be signed days from now. Well, I'm pretty sure it still hasn't been signed. If you go pedal to the metal building the wall, it is his campaign promises, and keep bragging about shutting down travel from China. I wish he had done it a little bit sooner, but that is something worthy of bragging about. I wish he would think to himself, when I take Peter Navarro's advice, everything goes great. When I take Jared's advice, everything goes to crap. If he would just listen to the people who seem to be giving him good advice, because his instincts are quite good, not having done that, if he doesn't do that, and if the country doesn't start up again pretty soon, it does look like we're headed for a pretty rough time. And it may be unfair, but he's the president, and the odds are he's going to get blamed. That is pretty much my same position pre-coronavirus, which I will elaborate on more thoroughly, because really, who knows what's going to happen with the coronavirus. Maybe this malarial drug will save us, much to the disappointment of the left and MSNBC. There was a fantastic cartoon on, I think it was, what is it, that Babylon Bee, the satirical site yesterday, with a guy in his hospital bed. Man in hospital with coronavirus, hoping malarial drug doesn't work and he dies to prove Trump is stupid. That's about what it's come to. We have one political party rooting for mass death and for drugs not to work. But as for the election generally, and putting the coronavirus aside, because like I say, that it seems like sort of a microcosm of we're looking at. I've gone from being about the only person who said Trump was going to win in 2016 to having no idea what's going to happen in 2020. And I know if you watch certain cable news, of course is going to win. Maybe, maybe, but certain cable news stations said the same thing about John McCain. They said the same thing about Al Franken. Oh, I'm not even getting off the couch to fight that one. That's a joke. They said the same thing about, oh, Barack Hussein Obama. Republicans do tend to have a chronic problem of overconfidence. I like to be pessimistic, go in expecting the worst, and then you'll work harder. The scenario under which Trump loses, I'm going to start with that. I think that is the by far less palatable outcome. So we'll start with that, run through it quickly, and then I'll give you the happy scenario. It mostly comes from three things: the media and Trump not keeping his campaign promises, and changes in the country. The media, and you'll see the media cuts both sides. The media is also going to be an argument for the scenario where Trump wins. Little devils. Their hysteria for the past 3.5 years has been so extreme, so intense. I mean, for people like me, I see it and say, screw you guys. Now I am determined to vote for Trump. But I'm not the average person. There are a lot of people out there, a lot of Trump voters, who are not stalwart Republican voters. And the deal the media is making with them, for independent voters, for voters on the fence, the deal the media is trying to force upon them is, if you want this craziness to stop, if you want it to be over, just sign on the contract right here. Just vote against Trump and he'll be out. But if you vote for him and we get another 4 years of this, it's going to be chaos, frenzy, hysteria. We're not letting up. Remember that Trump won the last election with 80,000 votes in 3 states: Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. 80,000 votes. And those states went Obama, Obama, Trump. That is the working class America, a lot of white working class, but also Black and Hispanic working class. And that's why I say point 2 on the scenario Trump loses. If Trump doesn't keep his promises, I think they might have noticed. I know I've noticed. I can't be the only one. My vote doesn't mean much. I'm a cheap date. I voted for John McCain. He needs those voters. Yes, apparently there actually is some wall being built now. I learned that because I saw a headline yesterday saying some Mexican smugglers, I don't know if they were smuggling humans or drugs, posing as wall construction workers, got in a shootout with our border patrol. I hope everyone's okay, but I emailed my friend back saying, well, at least there are construction workers. Good news. So Trump really needed to keep his promises. That is a problem. There are those 80,000 voters, and there's still time, but that's why I call myself president of the re-elect Donald Trump committee. By holding his feet to the fire, I think I'm helping him get re-elected. The third point for the sad scenario, and then we'll quickly move on to the happy scenario, is, to put it bluntly, and I will explain immediately why I'm putting it this way, there are fewer white voters to vote for Donald Trump this time around. No, wait, there is an alternative scenario. And I don't know, at the moment I'm kind of thinking it's more likely, but who knows? The three main factors in the Trump win scenario are the media, and Joe Biden. And I should probably say, I'm not completely convinced that the Democratic nominee will be Joe Biden. Yes, I know he has it. I know the New York Times is saying, oh, come on, what are you saying? You're going to replace him with Andrew Cuomo. How exactly does that happen? I will just say, if Democrats think they're going to lose, they will break laws, they will do anything. Remember when Senator Torricelli in New Jersey was about to go down to defeat the Democrats in violation of their own rules, and New Jersey law said, we're switching them out. And they did it, and they won. But let's assume it's Joe Biden. He will have a lot of help from the media. They will. You won't be seeing much of that. I think he ought to. I mean, in a way, the coronavirus helps Biden, because, I mean, I've been saying what the Democrats should do is not even tell us who they're running against Trump. Just, okay, it's just going to be generic Democrat. It's going to be not Trump. We're not telling you until after Election Day. And that's basically what the Chinese virus has accomplished. We haven't, other than a few hilarious videos he's sending out from his basement. Probably have a better background than mine. We haven't heard a peep out of Joe Biden. Probably good for them. But assuming it is Joe Biden, media will be pedal to the metal for him, yet and still. The media's hysteria is what this election, I think, ultimately comes down to is, which side loses first? If it's a referendum on Trump, he loses. If it's a referendum on the other side, those lunatics on MSNBC, oh no, Trump wins. And the more the media is crazy, they are crazy, they're being crazy, they're pushing the left to take extreme positions. They bring, even when I'm ready to boil Trump in oil, they bring me back to defend him. That says that's the argument where Trump wins. Much of this is covered in my last book, Resistance is Futile. I wrote the book because I kept finding myself at parties with mainstream media reporters, and I seem to be always telling them, would you drop this Russia nonsense? Attack him for not building the wall. He's not keeping any of his promises. So, I'm surrounded by New York Times reporters telling them how to attack the president. And I thought, no, it's useless. No one will hold his feet to the fire on his promises. They're just going to run off on this crazy Russia thing, driving everyone in the world crazy. And that is what they've done. They have been reporting on basically 3 news stories since Election Day 2016. We hate Trump. Yeah, we really effing hate Trump. Trump, we hate the guy. That's it. That's it. That's what you get every night. Well, I do think that's driving some people will say, oh, please just make it be over. But I think some people are going to see, I'm not putting these people in charge. Also, because of their craziness, the way Trump has driven them absolutely crazy, it's pushed the left into taking positions that are heinous to 90% of Americans, things they never believed before, as, for example, on immigration. The left, the Democratic parties, the media, their position on any issue basically comes down to, what does Trump think about that? oh, that's awful. That's it. That's how you can figure out where they stand on something. I believe Trump could get the Democratic Party to officially support pederasty if he came out against it. That's what they do. As Frank Bruni said in the New York Times, stop just trying to be the antonym of Donald Trump. And so, for example, on immigration, and it used to be that there was no daylight between Trump's position on immigration and Bernie Sanders' position on immigration. Even last year, Bernie Sanders, he was like Dr. Strangelove. If you've ever seen my favorite movie, he couldn't help himself, even though he's technically signed on to the Democrats' open borders policy. Someone said, how can you say you're for the, in the audience, ask him, how can you say you're for the working class when you're for open borders? And whoa, Bernie Sanders came back against him hard, saying, you're misinformed. I'm not for open borders. He wasn't as tough as he was back in 2016, but he absolutely said, we can't just bring in poor people to drive down working class wages in America. This was the position, I think all of the Democrats running against Trump have voted for a wall, but in order to prove they're the opposite of Trump, now they're promising open borders, bring in hundreds of millions of poor people. Well, even sane liberals, Frank Bruni, whom I just mentioned, Thomas Friedman, I don't want to go, out on a limb calling him sane, but New York Times op-ed writer Thomas Friedman, Andrew Sullivan, they've all written articles begging the Democrats to stop being for open borders. This is a loser with the American people. But I don't think the left, I don't think the Democrats, I don't think the media can help themselves. They're going to keep just charging over this cliff. Then we also have Joe Biden. Assuming it is Joe Biden as the nominee, this isn't going to be lunch bucket Joe, in part because of the factors I've just described and one other. This is social justice warrior Joe. He has been like that from the day he announced. Suddenly he doesn't have so much of a feel for Home Depot and the hammers. It's more about transgenders and white supremacists. Like I say, unappealing positions to 90% of Americans. And look at how he got the nomination. It's not as if Biden went to the African-American voters of South Carolina and said, hey, sorry, I know I screwed up. Give me another chance. I think I can do this. I don't know. It was almost nearly the opposite. It was the Black voters of South Carolina who picked Biden up off the floor, slapped him, sober up, man. We're taking the test for you, which they did, made him the nominee. And now, come Monday morning, oh, does he owe them? Now, if it were ordinary Black Americans Biden owed, that wouldn't be so bad. But I have a feeling it's going to be more the activist Democrats, the Black Lives Matters Democrats. I mean, look at Democratic debates, how everyone went wild. Media certainly, they loved Elizabeth Warren and how she took out Michael Bloomberg. It still makes me laugh. Wall Street we're talking about here. And the Democrats' big complaint is sexism. No, not that you took chances, cost the economy billions of dollars, we bailed you out, and 6 months later you were paying yourselves gigantic bonuses. Nope, Democrats are cool with that. They're worried about sexism. These silly non-disclosure agreements, that whole thing. That's going to be the new Joe Biden, and the Black Lives Matter, the Black activists, as opposed to ordinary Black people who are the victims of releasing criminals on the street. The other thing they went after Bloomberg for, damn him, he saved tens of thousands of Black lives in New York City with stop and frisk. That was a problem for the modern social justice warrior Democratic parties, which is any part, whether it's Biden or Cuomo or whomever, that's the party we're going to be running against. Whichever Democrat becomes president, we're probably looking at racial quotas on arrests, on school suspensions, on prisons. On prisons. The left is very anti-science when it comes to crime. This means either a lot of, I don't know, Asian and white people are going to have to be thrown in prison on minor offenses or some trumped up charge, or you're going to have to empty out a lot of the prisons. I'm sorry that the victims of crime who identify the criminals and the police who arrest them and the multiracial juries who convict them, I'm sorry that that ends up putting a disproportionate number of Black men. They don't mind that there's also a lot more men in prison than women. It's only this one thing. But I think the solution for that is not to empty the prisons. It is all sorts of other things that ends with Black men commit fewer crimes. That is not the position of the Democratic Party. And I think when people see that face to face, one thing Trump is very, very good at is saying the right thing. And that's I guess the final points I'll make on how the media is helping Trump. And that is another part of their derangement is instead of attacking Trump for what he does, they're always attacking him for what he says. Well, yeah, look at Trump's Twitter feed. He's been a fantastic president. Unfortunately, he doesn't actually do any of that stuff. But that's what they do. It's what he says, and what Trump says is a lot of great stuff. I'll conclude now and take your questions. I just want to say that I think we are getting to a very tough time for America and the entire world if Trump loses. Not because Trump has been so great, as those of you who follow me on Twitter know, I've been a little testy with him, but because of what we're looking at on the other side. And if that is made clear to the American people, I can't imagine a majority of Americans not saying, keep me away from these people. I will not vote for them. I don't care what Trump is doing. I will not vote for them. Thank you. I'll take your questions.
Thank you, Ann. It's been a pleasure. That was a great speech. We're very thankful for your time today. The first question I'd like to start off with is one actually regarding our organization with CFACT. As you probably recently found out, we're an organization dedicated to individual liberty, free market values, and protecting the environment. What would you say to those on the right who are interested in protecting those values, but also convincing them that immigration, above all else, will determine the outcome for them?
Well, they should read, I think it's chapter 13 in Adios America, because it really, in my immigration chapter, I was citing mostly liberal sources. It was, the backpackers and the people wandering through our national park saying, "Oh my gosh, this illegal immigration, they're trampling, precious ecosystems." As you said in your introduction, I think liberals use fake environmentalism to push a separate agenda of taking us back to the dark ages. But real environmentalism, of course, that is a conservative value. We love the real environment. And I also tell young conservatives, I don't know if this is prevalent anymore, but when I was in college, there was sort of, I don't know, a macho PJ O'Rourke, oh, screw the environment, we'll pave the Grand Canyon, which I admit it's okay to say that just to annoy a liberal. But if you mean it seriously, no, that's not our party. That's not our movement. We have a beautiful, beautiful country. It isn't just the culture. It is the natural beauty. It is the mountains and the Grand Canyon and the deserts. They're beautiful. The Great Lakes. We have a beautiful country. And as in our eating habits, as in our criminal habits, as in our calling up little old ladies and trying to scam them with some, credit card scheme, these aren't natural Native American habits. We are bringing in people not only who are not being checked for their criminal nature, but who have a different panoply of crimes that are, so we know how to deal with our criminals. And, liberals, stop telling me about American criminals. Oh, I would love to deport them. Love to. We have our own criminals. We don't need to bring in more criminals. We don't need to bring in more people who are not treating our environment with respect. But if you love this country, you love the natural beauty of this country.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned before, it's kind of become this, I don't know, cliche that the right just doesn't care about the environment and we prioritize just like making fun of it or something like that. But I think that's kind of an interesting part of what Donald Trump brought to the GOP and what his brand of conservatism is. Recently, President Trump has taken the unprecedented Republican position to provide health care to uninsured Americans, stimulus for small business owners and unemployed workers, and is currently suspending or temporarily suspending student loan payments. Are these policies the future of the GOP, or is this an expression of socialism?
Um, let's hope it's not the future of the GOP. Let's hope the Chinese virus isn't in our future at all, which is what we should really be doing, is disconnecting us from China. And I think a little more stress on where this virus came from. It really is amazing to me that the media and the left's first reaction to a viral pandemic that at the time they were saying would kill millions of Americans. Now, I don't know what we're down to, 60,000, 100,000. And their reaction was, do we find a cure? Do we isolate the vulnerable? No, let's come up with a new name that doesn't sound racist. That was who? That was our, well, great thinkers. I think these are just emergency measures. I mean, my understanding, I didn't really pay attention to the stimulus. They got to do something. I think the idea of it is, and whenever the government does something, it's taking a sledgehammer where you need a tiny little laser. So I'm sure, like all other government programs, 80% of the money will be wasted. But the idea is to briefly suspend. I mean, these student loans are going to have to be paid back eventually, but if you're going to tell people you can't go to work, something had to be done. So I don't really have a problem with it. And I must say, I looked at it very closely. I also assumed that the Republicans got snookered, as they always do. That was the one thing I sort of noticed as they were talking about it. The Democrats come in with here's our wish list. And it's completely insane. The Republicans' response is to come up with a basically serious law to begin with. I mean, I don't think there was a lot of pork or BS in what the Democrats or Republicans were proposing. And the Democrats' idea of a victory is, well, we cut 30% out of the insane proposal by the Democrats. No, we wanted a little more than that. Thank you very much, Mitch McConnell.
Thank you indeed. So just because CFACT, or at least our chapter is the University of Minnesota chapter, is a college chapter. We've had some fantastic contributors. One of them, Fred Singer, he recently passed away. He was a fantastic voice against usually politically monolithic universities. My question is how can our university be saved from this kind of rampant leftism that we're tending to see today?
That's an excellent question. Obviously, persuasion argument does not work with left-wing fascists. I think it is to completely withdraw the student loan program and get colleges to back their own loans. But what we're seeing with colleges is the same thing we saw with the low interest, the liar's loan mortgages. You have politicians, elected politicians, like carnival barkers, gotta go to college, must go to college, must have a BA. Well, is a BA really that useful if you're majoring in gender studies? Is it really that important for all kinds of jobs out there? If colleges think, oh, this education is so valuable, you're going to be dead if you don't have a college education, let them back their own loans. And then I think you'd see a little trimming of the fat.
No doubt. That's very true. So as you pointed out with the Wuhan virus, it's mostly been a product of free trade and unrestricted borders. Why do you think President Trump continues to listen to advisors who advocate for these policies?
That's a great question. That's how high is up? An unanswerable question. I will say, I don't think he was actively lying. I think he's just lazy. I think he really meant the stuff he said. And then he got elected, and two people raised an objection, and he said, oh yeah, okay, never mind. Oh, I didn't know I was gonna have to make a phone call. No, I'll just lie and tell my supporters I built the wall. I really think that's all it is. I think it's laziness and narcissism, but I think I've tweeted this. I've often thought if he could just remove everyone from the White House. I think if you threw a glass of cold water on Donald Trump in the middle of the night and asked him a question on pretty much any issue, just wake him up. He doesn't have time to think or talk to anyone. What is your immediate instinct? He would get the right answer 99% of the time. But then he surrounds himself with advisors, some of whom, although there's only really one I can think of now, but I don't want to hold his head underwater until the bubbles stop. That's Peter Navarro. There must be some others in there. Oh, I like Wilbur Ross. There are a few others. There are a few others. That's unfair. But surrounds himself with people who, for example, talked him out of ending the carried interest loophole for hedge fund managers. That's not going to play well with those 80,000 voters that pushed him over the top. Hiring more Goldman Sachs employees than Obama or Bush combined. I mean, I don't even want to be talking about this stuff when we're heading into an election, and if the other side wins, it's Armageddon. But come on, keep your promises. I mean, it makes me so angry. Not for me, but for the working class in America. They have been betrayed and betrayed and betrayed, and they're hanging on by their fingernails. And this guy comes along and promises, no, I'm going to govern for you. I'm not going to be like these other Republicans who, whatever you want, Wall Street. I'm not going to govern like the Democrats, who totally became the party of Wall Street, starting with Bill Clinton, which was great because they were, could hang out with the actresses in the Hamptons. They could stop pretending to like fly over people. It was, such a beautiful marriage. So Democrats love Wall Street. Why do Republicans love Wall Street? They aren't your friends, Republicans. But anyway, Trump comes along. He's something totally different. And thus far, we have a little time left. Maybe the Chinese virus will get him to really bring American manufacturing home. I don't know if you saw in my column last week. I'm sorry, my answers are getting a little too long, but I'll just say this in response to that. I suggested, and I think it's a great idea, that Amazon, among the hundreds of ways you can refine a search on Amazon for, calories, gluten-free, prime, price. Could you put in percentage made in America and percentage made in China, or percentage made any place, just where it was made? Because I've noticed so many electronics of mine kept breaking down. This was a few years ago, that all I was searching on Amazon was this made in China? It's not even the money. You're wasting my time having to keep reordering these simple electronics that I need around the house. And I would like to help my fellow Americans. I mean, Breitbart has run all these stories. I think it's Breitbart, where hiring all Americans, it adds like 3 cents to the cost of the goods we're importing from China. I think what businessmen, and here I will take their side, I think what they're mostly going to foreign countries for is to avoid the trial lawyers, to avoid the employment lawsuits, the discrimination lawsuits, the OSHA regulations, the EPA regulations. Ease up on that stuff. The Democratic Party, my entire life, has been pushing this idea that, oh, we're helping you, American worker. We're going to give you a higher minimum wage. We're going to give you all these OSHA requirements. So if you wash windows, you're not allowed to sweep the floor. It's mostly work rules. It's not pay that is sending, how much they have to pay for American, that's sending American corporations to other countries. It's all this crap Democrats have put on really the American worker, making it very expensive to hire an American and less expensive to hire anybody else. Okay, I said I was going to end with that. Just one last example on that. I worked for Senator Abraham from Michigan, big union state, and a minimum wage. bill came up, but we're all free marketers in the office, so he pretty much just hid from the staff when that bill was coming up. We finally have a meeting and it comes up, and I said, hey, I have an idea, because he had to vote for it, big union state. I said, I have an idea. Why don't you propose a minimum $100,000 a year salary? How are Democrats going to argue against that? Then they might understand. When you raise how much it costs to hire a worker, you're going to have fewer of those workers. If you make the price cheaper, you will have more of those workers.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned before, these cheap consumer goods that you buy on Amazon and such, they're all made in China. But it's not just cheap consumer goods. With the Wuhan virus in particular, we've been seeing the CCP threaten to cut off crucial medical supplies that only they make to both Europe and America and Canada. Has free trade kind of crippled us pragmatically too? Sorry, one last addendum. In economics, we're often taught that the country that makes one good best should be the one making it, and each country should sacrifice their manufacturing capacity just for that particular product. On a pragmatic level, has this economic theory kind of crippled us, just to think of the world as a giant marketplace and not sovereign nations?
Absolutely. As long as the left is so besotted with Alexander Hamilton right now, could we go back to what Alexander Hamilton said about trade? No, make your stuff here. Don't be reliant on other countries. I mean, it's drugs this time, and I know we're all worried about being able to get drugs, but what if there's a shooting war with China? They make all our steel. Are they going to say, oh no, I know we're at war, but we had an agreement? No, it's crazy not to have most of the things that we need made here in this country. I trust Americans. I like Americans. They aren't going to be selling us, as I wrote in my column a couple of weeks ago, drywall that poisons the homeowners and costs trillions of dollars to rip out, dog food that kills the dogs because they put melamine in it, and on and on and on. I want to have some safety standards. When I say there are too many regulations, I don't want no regulations, still want meat inspectors. There's a lot of crazy stuff out there that helps big corporations, but some of it you need. And China, that's how China can make things cheaper. There's no quality control. Yep, a little poison might slip in your drug. But no, these libertarian Cato arguments about, we are the world, we're all one economy, they always remind me, I mean, maybe this is a stretched metaphor, but libertarians' position on drugs. That's very nice for, even somebody like Milton Friedman, but Milton Friedman, I'm sorry, I will hang on your word on everything, but you're a total dork. You've never been around someone on drugs. It destroys lives. People will take it and take it and take it. And what if there were a drug where you could turn yourself into a wolf? Actually, wolves are kind of cute. Where you could turn yourself into a coronavirus. So sometimes I think the Dorcas erectus libertarians need a little more normal real world experience. Make our stuff here. We're gonna have little stores that sell, scarves and sandals that are made in India or China or whatever. I'm not saying nothing comes in, but for the main things we need to survive as a country, food, drugs, steel, I want it made here.
Absolutely. Moving away from the Dorcosaurus libertarians, we have a question from the audience. Brant Frosk would like to know if you could tell us what you think of the possibility of a Senator Chris Kobach or Tucker Carlson run for president down the road. Who would you personally like to see run?
Definitely Chris Kobach. And for those of you who don't know, he's running for the US Senate right now from Kansas. Look him up, spectacular human being. Harvard, Yale Law. He was a Marshall Scholar, not a cheesy little Rhodes Scholar at Oxford. He wrote E-Verify. He wrote what the left denounced as the Papers, Please law for Arizona. Yeah, upheld by the Supreme Court. He is tall, smart, good-looking, beautiful family from Kansas. Somebody someday has got to keep Trump's promises on immigration. I'm thinking it's going to be President Kobach. I also love Governor DeSantis of Florida, another Harvard man, very smart, very, very good on immigration, very patriotic. They're both young, good-looking, smart, and solid on all the issues I know about. So they're my two choices.
Excellent. And then going into the future of the GOP itself, do you see them realistically taking over the party in a post-Trump GOP? Right now, you kind of see a dichotomy between the Ron DeSantises and the Chris Kobachs, with the Dan Crenshaws and the Nikki Haley's, the more establishment type of conservatives in a new era. Who do you pragmatically see taking over the party after Trump?
Well, I see the Crenshaws and the Haleys getting a lot of TV time. But when it comes to votes, I mean, you know, who knows? Maybe because it's famous last words and there is a certain cable station that's pushing the establishment Republicans. No, I mean, it's kind of striking. Whenever politicians push popular ideas, they tend to do very well with voters. I wish they'd figure that out. When they push ideas popular with the ruling class, they do fantastically well on getting cable bookings, being quoted in the New York Times. Not so good on the votes from the American people.
Absolutely. And this dichotomy between Donald Trump's America First platforms and the more establishment Republicans has kind of resulted in this interesting dichotomy between conservatives, who you have this one side where their main talking point seems to be about low taxes and reacting to leftist imagery or rhetoric, or more America First dissidents. One notable one that I would like to know what you think of is Michelle Malkin, who's taken this position. Which side would you say you empathize more with, and are you on a side?
I haven't been following. I tend not to read other conservatives. I know Michelle's been great on immigration for a long time, great on trade for a long time. As for anything recent, my fellow conservative writers, and I remember Rush told me this years ago, he doesn't listen to any other talk radio guys. He doesn't want it to influence them, and I'm heavily the same way. Sometimes I will read the immigration website. I actually got it out of the habit when I was writing Adios America. But anyway, I'm writing Adios America, a book about immigration. I completely could never go to the patriotic immigration webpage, VDare. I've gotten out of the habit now. I have to remember to go back there now and then. But I've read so much about immigration. They still have some good stuff, but I tend to avoid, especially somebody writing about something that I might well be writing about. So yes, love Michelle Malkin, but this is more of an abstract thing. I know she's good on trade, good on immigration. And wait, what was the first part of your question? There's something I wanted to get to about that, the dichotomy of
the first part was just kind of going over Conservative Inc., who seem to solely care about,
oh yeah, I know what I wanted to say. I was just thinking about this last night. I don't know why it popped into my head. It was the cutting taxes crowd. And I hate taxes because I think, you have to look at it. It's not so much, do I want to pay for, this wonderful program? It's, does the government get it or do I get it? And most of the time, I'd rather have them take the same amount of money and just take it out into a bonfire and burn it, because I so hate most of the things the government is doing. So do not get me wrong. But this, I mean, it just seems to me right now, it's a time, the way I separate it is between the high end of the bell curve and the low end. You have these, just standard issue Republicans, and it's just, what would Reagan do? Well, that was 30 years ago. That's a different battle now. This is like, during the Cold War, Reagan consulting how Andrew Jackson fought the Indians. no, that things have changed. It's a new country. There are new issues here. And it did really annoy me that Trump did not run on tax cuts. I mean, I wouldn't have him raise taxes. That would be insane. But that's the only thing he got done during the first 2 years. How does a tax cut help somebody who doesn't have a job? No, he promised the poor, long-suffering working class, I'm finally getting to your issues. This government cares about you. We're getting to your issues. And now what's the re-election campaign? Second term, I'll get to your issues. Sorry about that first term stuff. But these, we have to fight every war, bomb everyone, cut taxes. What's the other stuff? No, I mean, there's a lot that needs to be done right now to save this country, the greatest country. And it's not just our country that's headed for a very bleak future. It's the entire world if America is gone. And we'll just become some crap ass country with like Brazil, because I promise you, the rich are gonna do very well. Oh, the Jeff Bezoses, the Wall Streeters, no, they're gonna be fine. And the rest of us are gonna be their servants. We'll be, doing their physical therapy and selling them sweaters and, being their doorman. But everybody else, it's going to be a long, dark period. It's very important. And the main issues right now are immigration, trade, and shutting down the Chinese wet markets.
Well, they came back. So that's an interesting point you made, though, about kind of an out-of-date spectrum where, conservatives have this, this dichotomy where they see like the struggles of Americans. Right now, the one that I'm most familiar with as a conservative myself is capitalism versus socialism. And that spectrum has seemed to come out of a Cold War America where you had the Western powers versus the Soviet Union. And it was, the free world essentially versus communism. Mm-hmm. Has that spectrum gone out of date as well as we face a American landscape that is effectively becoming socialist just through immigration, as you pointed out, on its own? So is the argument of free capitalism versus socialism, is that also antiquated?
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Thank you for asking that. I don't understand this big thing about, no socialism. What are you talking about? We live in a country that's about half socialist. Republicans don't want to do anything about it. I mean, even when Obamacare came along, I was just always scratching my head, this idea that it's as if we have, a dog-eat-dog capitalist system. And, Democrats are going to come and have the government help people. No, before Obamacare, healthcare was probably 60, 70% socialist. I mean, you need 90% of medical care you're ever going to need by the time you're on Medicare. Okay, that's the government. If you're poor, Medicaid. You have the Veterans Administration. You have state governments deciding what kind of insurance you're allowed to buy or not buy. I take it back. It was more like 80% socialist even before Obamacare came along. Our answer shouldn't be when they stopped Hillary Care, before you were born probably. When they stopped Hillary Care, the Republicans, as Stan Evans advised at the time, said, no, do not go out and, celebrate, pop champagne bottles and say, oh, well, our work is done. We saved a medical system that's only, 70% socialist. Fix it now. Allow competition across state lines now. But this idea, socialism, I guess it doesn't sound frightening to some people, and there are worried. It doesn't sound frightening to the Republican Party. We're always offering, look, we're socialists too, but we'll give you 80% as much. It's not only not a winning argument, it's not a particularly useful position to take.
Absolutely. I have a question here. It comes from Adam Smith. He says he's from Michigan. He wants to know, where are the civil rights for all of us? Our state has just banned visiting friends. Sales for gardening supplies and fabric are banned. gun shows are prohibited, and no political violence is listed as a loud exception to our lockdown. I wonder why nobody is filing lawsuits for trampling over every other citizen's most basic constitutional rights.
I think that's a great question. As I said at the beginning, this is TSA for the country. I didn't know no fabric stores. Okay, I guess that makes sense. The big one for me was California. Judge just decided gun stores are not essential businesses, but cannabis stores are. Oh, that's your future, America. I'm warning you, that's your future. That's a good question from Adam Smith. I mean, at the moment, I think the media has done a really good job whipping up a panic. And again, I don't want to say too much about this because we do need more data to come in. This is a very bad virus. I mean, we do need to see how much of the population has it, to determine how fatal it is. And the studies thus far that I've seen, one puts it, where's it from? Germany? Denmark? It's 0.05% die. And then there was another study, well, it doesn't matter. The evidence isn't in. We need to know how bad this virus is. Right now, all we're getting are, these, I think, often, as you've seen from my Twitter feed, sort of exaggerated descriptions of what's going to happen. I mean, the worst stuff you hear on TV, you're thinking, oh my gosh, and then realize, oh, that was a prediction. That hasn't happened. Can we go back to what's happened? What happened to those ventilators? Cuomo said he needed, 30,000? Trump said, I don't think you're going to need that many. Oh, damn that Trump. Damn him. Well, turns out they needed about 5,000. Is that the number now? Okay, I may have my numbers slightly wrong, but the overall point is accurate. We keep getting predictions on horrible things. So, and this is an answer to Adam Smith. At the moment, I think, unfortunately, I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of Americans would say, no, screw you, Adam Smith and Ann Coulter. We have to shut everything down. I mean, you hear about people being kind of nasty out there if someone isn't walking down the sidewalk with the appropriate six feet between them. But I'm with Adam Smith on this. I think we should be worried about this crazy restriction on our liberties. And as I said at the beginning, often for reasons that do not make us any safer. I mean, there are things I would do that would be harsher, that would be tougher, as with airport security. And my long battle with TSA. Can't you give an extra little check to the dangerous looking swarthy males and not be goosing, old black men from Alabama? For Pete's sake. And that's what we're doing to the entire country. Young, healthy people with that who aren't vapors, no vaping. That's been a problem since long before coronavirus came along. Remember, you can look this up online. There were young kids vaping, being rushed to the hospital, destroying their lungs with the vaping. That was in 2019. Doctors have been warning me about that forever. It started to break in 2019. Okay, so vapors, people with certain pre-existing conditions, and people really 70 or over, but let's say 65 or over to be safe. They should be very heavily protected. Send them $10,000 and let the rest of us get back to work. There are ways this could be done that are more freedom promoting, but as I also said at the beginning, the government's doing something. They're going to be taking a sledgehammer where we need a tiny little, medical instrument.
Yeah, absolutely. We have another question here. This one's from Brian Frost. He wants to know what your thoughts are on the Eastern European situation, Hungary, Poland, Viktor Orban in particular, pro-family and pro-baby policies in Hungary as well.
I love them. I'm generally against, and this was something I was hoping Trump would change, dual citizenship. No, I pick a side. But in this one case, I would like to become a dual citizen with one of those countries. Beautiful people, no immigration. Beautiful cities still, too.
Really, yeah. I've seen pictures online. Yeah, but
I mean, it's funny. I feel sorry for them. First, you know, the Nazis run over them. Then the communists run over them. They're finally free. They're finally free for 20 years. And now, okay, now you got to take the Muslims. They just said, no, we've had it. We paid at the office.
So this next question comes from, I'm sorry, I think we're coming up on your time. Is it okay if we ask you a couple more questions?
Sure.
Awesome. This question, I love it because it relates to your actual speech. You've obviously been very critical of President Trump as someone who actually kind of was a catalyst to his rhetoric with Adios America. And you've been more critical of him in the past. This question comes from Hank Oslo. So since you have been critical of President Trump in the past for failing to follow up on his campaign promises, is it worth Trump supporters rejecting him in 2020 when he does seem, according to your according to your calculus, is it worth Trump supporters rejecting him when he opens up space for America First candidates and policy within the Republican Party?
No, it definitely is not. My argument is it doesn't matter what you and I do. What was the name of the guy who asked the question?
Hank Oslo.
Hank, it doesn't matter, I suspect, definitely what I do, how you and I vote, and just say, oh my gosh, look at what the alternative is. I'm saying, look at what the alternative is. I mean, that's why I say I'm helping this guy get reelected. I'm worried there are going to be, with or without the coronavirus. I don't know if the coronavirus makes it better or worse. Probably better, unless he gets tough with China and gets tough on the trade and uses this to bring manufacturing up. If there's still things he can do before the election, if he does those things, I'm a lot more confident that he's going to win. If he doesn't do those things, the media is not going to get caught sleeping this time. And I think there will be some number. He won by 80,000 votes across 3 states. Remember that. If any of those 80,000 noticed that he hired all those Goldman Sachs guys, didn't end the carried interest loophole, how many miles of the wall do we have now? 3? But yes, Hank, and to any of the rest of you listening, no, the alternative is definitely worse. I was saying to one of my friends, I don't know, it was probably a month ago, watching these Democratic debates. I mean, I sort of surprised myself in an exasperated way, saying, these people are going to make me vote for Trump.
We have a question from Jesse Wooten. He wants to know what you think of the immigration detention camps in this Wuhan flu epidemic. He wants to know what your thoughts are on releasing the detainees in these camps in the event of the outbreak of the virus.
No, this is a great question. We all have to stay home, but illegal immigrants and people in jail, we're clearing out the jails, we're clearing out the because I'm sure they will be very, very law-abiding and careful to observe social distancing rules. It's madness. Give them the choice to go home. Watch out, we got this Chinese virus here. Here's the exit.
Yeah. All right. And I have one last question for you. I'd like to ask it on behalf of my mother. What advice do you give young women considering a career in the political sphere?
Oh, that's a very good question. It's kind of hard now because the media is so weird. And who knows how it's going to shake out. More people are online, which is good. On the other hand, corporate social media are throwing conservatives offline. I mean, I guess my general advice, I think this is still good advice, is to make as much money as you can and keep politics as a hobby. Because you can do a lot more good, whether you run for office yourself like Donald Trump. By and large, you can do a lot more good if you have FU money, if you can contribute to candidates, if you can help fund, a Twitter or a Facebook I mean, wouldn't you rather, who has more power, your pal Dan Crenshaw or Peter Thiel?
Exactly. All right. And it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for your time. We'd love to have you back next semester when hopefully things are back to normal. But it's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure for me too. So good to do this. Thanks for hosting me.
Excellent. Everyone else, if you are interested in CFACT and what we do, please feel free to check out our Facebook page and our Twitter page as well. So that's all I have for you. Have a good night, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.